Every sin, you can think of any sin you want to, and every sin promotes the self over God. God says love, people say, no, I choose to hate. God says forgive, no, I choose to get vengeance. God says to worship me, no, I choose to worship self. I choose to do what is better for me. Instead of controlling myself, I indulge in self-pleasures. So I started thinking, because I've talked a lot about sin this year, but I started thinking, why do we sin? I mean, really and truly, Adam and Eve had it wonderful in the garden. Everything was there that they wanted. They had everything. Happiness, God walked with them. They had everything they could choose. Heck, Adam got to name animals. I mean, anything that they wanted, they had. There was just this one little tree, one little restriction. And they couldn't even stay faithful to God with just one temptation. So what is it about sin? Is sin itself better than God? There must be something to that because we continue to sin. And really and truly, if you think about it for a moment, sin does quench a desire. In your life, when things are going bad, when your life is falling apart, when your life is leading nowhere, and you start living a life of sin, for a brief moment, those sins do bring you moments of pleasure. I'm not fixing to sit here and tell you I don't understand why people commit sin, because none of it brings any type of pleasure. No, most sin brings some type of pleasure. That's why people do it. But have you ever noticed, a long time ago, I was watching a TV program, and I never knew this, but these people were stranded on a boat, and after a few days, they started thirsting real bad. And one of them said, y'all can do what y'all want, but we got this big ocean right here. I'm going to just take this thing and start scooping me up some water and drinking. And you know what? For a moment, it quenched that thirst. But the more of that salt water that he drank, the more that he drank to quench that thirst, the more devastation that it was doing to his body. And he didn't realize that that release of that quenching of his thirst was only for a brief moment, because what happened later was even more devastating than what he was going through. I started thinking, so what do we do? If we have sin in the world and we know we're going to sin, people sin all today, what do we do? And I started thinking, if somebody lived back in the days of the bubonic plague and they walked around and said, listen, touch my hand, put your fingertips to mine, and the plague will pass from you to me, and I will carry it, and you will be healed, and they did it, don't you think that there would have been a line of millions of people wanting to touch the hand of this person that could take the bubonic plague from them? If I stood up here right here today and told you I had the power to put my hand out and you could touch it and it would take cancer from your body and totally remove it and place it on me and you would live a life cancer-free, how many people with cancer do you think would be here tonight to touch my hand? A bunch. A bunch of people would be here because something that was killing them, that was destroying their life, could be removed with just one touch. But as you know, the history books tells of no person that could do that. But the Bible tells of one. That not only would he cure a plague, not only would he cure cancer, not only would he cure every disease, but if you could just get one touch of his garment, one touch of his hand, just the thought of him could remove the disease of sin from your life. This man Jesus could do that. The people in the world are so worried about sickness and illness and disease and death, and they don't realize that there is a man out there that can reach out, and if you will just take his hand, he can relieve you from all of that. He can cure every solitary bit of that. "300 years after the bubonic plague hit into Europe, there was a little town called, and I don't know if it's pronounced Eyam or Eyam, England. And there was a man named George Vickers. And George Vickers was a tailor. And he had ordered some clothes that had come in from London. And when he got the package, he opened up the box and he looked at the cloth and everything, and he shook it out to look at it real good. And when he shook it out, the fleas that had gotten in there went everywhere on the store. And within a matter of just a few days, that town was dying out. People were dying left and right, and they were quarantined. George Vickers died within the first week. They were quarantined, and to get food, people would come to this empty field and lay food out there, and when they left, these people would come hours later, gather up the food so that they could have something to eat. And as the people were dying, the people that were leaving the food realized at a distance that these same people kept coming to get the food that lived in this village. And as everybody around them was dying, they were not. Years later, we would discover that these people had a particular gene that made them immune to dying from this disease. Something in their DNA, something that came down from their fathers that was in their DNA, prevented them from getting this. They could get the disease, but it wasn't a death sentence. It didn't affect them. Don't you think if everybody that day could have picked that ancestry when it first came into Europe to be born out of, that they would have? But you know what? We have an ancestor. We have a father. See, they couldn't pick back then who their mama and daddy was. But we have a father that we can pick. And when we wash ourselves in his blood, we have the blood of Christ now that runs through us. Our DNA is the same DNA on the inside as our Father in heaven. We are now his children. And he says, even though sin may come into your life, even though sin may get on you, sin no longer has the power to kill you. Sin no longer has the power to destroy your life, because you are children of mine. And when you receive the blood, sin can no longer affect you. I want you to take that with you this week, and I want you to realize, just like with that bubonic plague, people could catch it and they could be a carrier, but it did not give them the fevers. It did not give them the boils. It did not take their life away from them. It did not affect them. It was in them, but it just had no more power over them. As you leave here tonight, realize sin is out there. Will you sin? Yes. Do you have to choose a sin lifestyle? No. Because sin no longer, when you're a child of God, has power over you. You can sin and it can get in there and it might confuse and mess up your life, but it no longer can kill you. Because Christ said, here now, I offer a vaccination to sin. And let me tell you what, if you leave this earth, I don't care if you leave here from cancer, it's all right. If you leave here from a plague, it's all right. If you leave here from a heart attack or a stroke or diabetes or asthma or whatever you can think of, if you leave this world from any of those, it is all right. But do not leave this world because you died to sin. Make sure when you leave this world, you have died to Christ, because that shows that sin can no longer touch you. This evening, the altar is going to be open. As y'all know, I open the altar every time we meet, because I just do not understand why in the world you would meet if you didn't think that somebody could possibly be changed. And I know that sometimes certain things speak to certain people, and I know that every time that a person cannot be changed every Sunday. But I always open the altar because I'm not going to stand in front of my Maker. And some people have asked me, why do you have an altar call all the time? Because I'm not going to stand in front of my Maker and him say, there was a certain day, June 12, 2011, do you remember it? And I'd probably say no. There was somebody that was wanting to come. There was somebody that was wanting to come and fall at the altar, but you never gave them a chance. I would rather give a person a chance and no one come than not give a chance when somebody was dying to come. This altar is going to be open if you want to rid sin from your life. There is only one vaccination. His name is Jesus Christ. we will please stand. We will sing Amazing Grace. We'll sing it together. We need no instrumental support. We'll sing the first line of Amazing Grace.